It's Thursday, March 19th, 2020. This is the A Steady Heart in Turbulent Times webinar with Myoshin, Kelley, and Tim Olmsted. And I've given a little introduction for the attendees here. This is the recording for people who will be listening to later. So we're going to start out tonight with a guided meditation from Myoshin and hear some reflections from Myoshin and Tim, and then get into some questions from the people attending today. So thank you very much for joining us, and Myoshin, please.
Thank you, Max. Just want to say a few words before we begin, just acknowledging something of what we may be feeling at this time. As Max said, I think we're all in uncharted territory. And so, I'm very touched by the response of people wanting to turn up, to be together, to practice together, to look at how we can navigate, be in this very turbulent world at this time. And if we've been practicing for long, we know that the practice is something that can help us to find a steadiness, an ease, and be able to include all of the different experiences that may be passing through awareness and help us to stay connected in the world at this time. So we thought we'd just have just a 5-minute meditation. This is something that I'm finding really helpful in my own life right now, is periodically throughout the day to have some formal meditation sessions, and just short. It's a way of dropping out of the busyness of the mind, the chatter, the pull to more social media, to looking at the news, and just come back into that sense of being. And so this will just be for about 5 minutes. So beginning by finding a comfortable posture where you feel connected and supported by the earth. Let the earth hold you, letting your spine be upright and supportive to wakefulness. And yet relaxing the muscles in the body. And just taking a moment to feel or know the experience of sitting. And then just taking a moment to touch into whatever it was that motivated you to come tonight. And sensing within this the qualities of love, compassion, and care from which this arises, and appreciating this. Feeling the caring of our own hearts. And then having awareness again of the sensations in the body. Whatever sensations are present, there's tightness, tension, Just allowing this to be known within awareness that is non-judgmental. There may be thoughts, emotions present. We don't need to block them, but we can simply become aware again of the physical sensations. Just letting there be a steadiness of awareness. You're feeling the ground, the air, so having a sense of relaxing and being present within this body. Okay. So, where to begin? We find ourselves in this time where our worlds are turned upside down, where the ways that we were perceiving reality, the ideas we had about what we might do, our plans for the future, everything seems different today and is changing on a day-to-day basis. So I'd just like to offer a few reflections of how we might meet this moment, how we might meet these challenges, and doing so in, I think, what is just a practical way. Realizing that tonight we have a lot of people from different backgrounds, that different faiths, that different styles of practice. And so that wanting to keep this to be something that is universally helpful, applicable. And in doing so, just trying to speak quite simply and to try to offer something that might be helpful as we navigate this terrain together. And this certainly is an aspect that we are seeing, is how deeply connected we are. That, when we make decisions now, it isn't about I, me, or mine anymore, but it really is about how can I be in this together with others and do the best that I can. And so, I think that as I go through some of the principles, it's helpful to remember that our practice is going to be what helps us to be able to stay present, to be responsive, to be open-hearted and present in our lives. And so we have to really listen deeply to what supports us in this time. And so these are just a few reminders of things you might find helpful. The first piece I'd like to speak about is just remembering that awareness is the essence of meditation. And so that is really looking to what helps support you in any moment to be present. It's not about a particular technique that we do. It's about finding stability through this knowing quality that is naturally within our own minds. And this awareness itself has such a power, that it is more powerful than all of these thoughts, emotions, these clouds that pass through it. That it gives us the sense of being able to be with these torrents of experiences we may be experiencing and to stay steady. It doesn't mean that they don't arise. And I think this is something we all need to acknowledge, is that we can have moments where we do get lost, where we do get fearful, where we do get anxious, and yet there is a way that we can be present with these. If people would like to, I'd really love to hear just some of the states of mind that you're experiencing. So, just one word about these states, and you can type them into the question box if you would like. See if I can, yeah.
They're coming in.
They're coming in. Fear, anxiety, detached, groundless, shock, angst, anger, exhausted, frustration, slow, stress, uncertainty, serenity, apprehension, anxious, tense, stable, panic, calm, opportunities. I mean, we can see it's the full range of experience that we are experiencing. And, we're writing in one word, but, often they come together, packages, they come in torrents. And so, wow, our job right now, to make a friend of all of this. We hear this over and over again from Mingyur Rinpoche, to make a friend of our minds, to make a friend of what arises. And, that's easier said than done right now. And so, this is where, if we can remember awareness, the power of awareness, come back, be present with. And yes, we'll get kicked out many times where we'll get lost in what's happening. But as soon as you recognize that, and it might be that you just start to feel the sensations in the body or the anxiety or the energy lifting, let that be a reminder. Wow, come back, take a breath, be here, allow. And it calls on us to really have that sense of standing upright within our experience, even though we will fumble, even though we will lose our way. And with that, we just need to have patience and kindness. I think it's really helpful to remember too that the body is a great resource for us at times. And, just like we did at the beginning of this webinar, to take moments of just feeling the connection with the earth, feeling tactile sensations. It helps to break that momentum, that energy that is, is just reaching out all the time, trying to make sense of our world, trying to find security, and instead just ground, be with, and let the energy move through without trying to stop it or follow it. Just let it be like the clouds, the winds moving through the sky. But that's where using tactile sensations can really help us to stay present. As well, it's if we've been practicing to know what's our easiest way to practice, if we find that we are getting, pulled into these cycles of fear thoughts or anxiety thoughts or future what if, that remember what's easiest for you, what's most natural to come back to awareness, and just do this, practice with it. And then, if we have training in being with emotions and thoughts, at times we can look directly into these emotions, to feel, what does fear feel like? What does anxiety feel like? But to see the parts of it, the components, and to see that we are not the emotions, we are not the thoughts, and that by becoming aware of the thoughts, we're no longer feeding them, and that they will go their own way. And the way of all phenomena is that of impermanence. At times, we'll be really in touch with our own suffering. And, just to allow this, know this, feel this with tenderness. This isn't a time where we feel like we have to be a high performer, but we have to be real, down to earth, honest with our experience. I mean, feels like a lesson of this time, to face this moment with honesty, just as we are. And so sometimes we may find that the practices of loving kindness, compassion will be of benefit, will help us to be able to sit with a tender heart, will help us to be able to open to ourselves when we feel like we're in faltering, that we're doing things that are exacerbating suffering, or we're overwhelmed by the situation. To know this is just suffering, and our natural heart's response is to be free of that. So allowing that energy of compassion to be present. It's also a time where insight will arise naturally. That we see this, we are getting the truth of impermanence moment to moment. That it is in our face. And this is a natural law of life. And so that impermanence, scary as it is, when things that we love and hold dearly are falling away, it is also true of all of the fear, the anxiety, the uneasiness that we're experiencing. And so just being able to watch the changes as they happen, and to not fixate or hold on to one state as being the way that it is. We get lost in that fixation. We become so isolated and alone. And yet when we come back to awareness, we come back to connection. So remembering awareness in these moments. And it's also a time where we see this truth of interconnectedness. It's reorienting how we live our lives, how we express ourselves. We are probably sitting at home, many of us alone or just with family, where not in connection in the way that we're used to, but we're making this decision out of our sense of caring and connection for others, and really letting that care imbue our experience. So these are just a few thoughts about how we can practice in this time that I'd like to share, and I'd like to pass it over to Tim for him to share a few.
Thanks, Myoshin, and greetings, everybody. Sorry my setup isn't as good as Myoshin's is. the light was better, but as we've been talking, the light's going down outside, so it's getting darker and darker. I'm sorry. So, as Myoshin said, and the reason we're here is to try to find a way to navigate this crazy situation that we're in, this, hopefully once in a lifetime situation. And the reason we're talking is because it may be that there's some truths or some lessons or some guidance in our tradition that help us with this. And this is what Myoshin's been talking about. And so I wanted to just say a couple of things about how to actually access authentic compassion in this situation. And then I'll end with about a 2-minute practice tip, a walk around your day practice tip. So those of you who know me know that I'm a sucker for quotes. And I love referring back to our lineage teachers. And one of the things, or one of the points that has always informed me at times like this, comes from one of Mingyur Rinpoche's 4 main teachers named Nushu Kempo. And he said, the only source of every kind of benefit for others is awareness of our own condition. He said, when we know how to help ourselves and how to work with our own situation, our feelings of compassion arise spontaneously without the need to hold ourselves to the rules of behavior of any religious doctrine. So this points, I think, to the very essential point, the beginning of everything, that to become really sensitive, intuitive, really connected about what's going on for us right now. When we become really clear, immediately clear, crystal clear about how much we want to be happy, how much we want to be at ease, to not be afraid, to be safe, to be loved, to be known, to be heard, to be secure. When we really get that, when we're really clear about that, then we become clear immediately and spontaneously about the reality of everybody. Our own experience of ourselves, our intuitive, sensitive, intimate experience of our own experience of our own life right now, this becomes our equalizing. This is how we equalize ourselves. In the classic tradition, there's 3 stages of developing compassion. And the first is this, called equalizing, which we realize intuitively that others and ourselves are exactly the same. So this common fate, this common reality, this common experience, this is our sort of essential kinship. This is what we share with each other. This is the authentic seed of kindness and compassion. You could say that this is the organic basis of the golden rule. So from this deep intimate experience of our own situation, the caring for others becomes completely natural and completely spontaneous. The Buddha talked about this in what is said to be his first teaching on compassion, which I find to be so evocative and so beautiful, it comes to me all the time. He said in the Metta Sutta, or in Sanskrit, the Maitri Bhavana Sutra, he said, or that's translated in one way of translating that is friendliness. He said, just as a mother would protect her life, with her life, her child, her only child, so one should cultivate a boundless mind towards all beings and friendliness towards the entire world. So this is it. When we become connected with ourselves and we look out and we just spontaneously become interested, connected, and intuitively and sort of affectionately connected with the reality of everybody else. Further, this global pandemic, the global nature of this, has forced us to become face-to-face with the truth of our lives, which is the truth of interdependence. Now, in the Buddhist philosophy, this idea of interdependence is often taken as a philosophical tenet. In other words, the idea that if we look closely, there is nothing that's permanent, singular, or interdependent or independent, and therefore everything is interdependent. But actually, if we look closely, This is the essential truth of our everyday life. Every day, every moment of our life, we are completely connected with, completely interdependent, and more accurately, I think, dependent on everybody. If we look closely, we see that absolutely everything that we have, everything that we know, everything we experience is frankly given to us by other people. Our very life is given by other people. Our health, the survival when we were babies, our education, our friendship, the fact that we have clean water, if we have clean water, this is created by other people. The fact that the streets are safe for us, it's created by other people. The Starbucks that we drink, the clothes that we wear, the technical systems that allow this to happen, in this webinar, I have no idea who did it. I didn't do it. Everything is offered to us completely by others. We are not only interdependent, we are completely dependent on everybody. In fact, as the wonderful teacher who many of you know, Khandro Rinpoche, said so beautifully, she said, "We are a gathering of the kindnesses of others." So I think with this in mind, if we keep this in mind, that we are connected, we are dependent on, our life has been given by others, then to care for them is completely spontaneous. It's completely natural. From this point of view, compassion is not some great favor that we do for anybody else. It's just a completely natural response to being connected with everybody. So in this way, we wake up to this extraordinary web of being that we're only a tiny part of. And to kind of conclude, another quote by Nushu Kempo, one of Mingyur Rinpoche's teachers, he said, "One realizes that there is no self separate from others. So one alleviates suffering and distress wherever it appears, within or without, whether for oneself or others." Why wouldn't you? Nobody wants to suffer, right? So for me, that pretty much sums the whole thing up. So I wanted to end with just a short tip, a practice tip for this week that you could take on or not, that is very easy. It takes a millisecond to do, and it's something you can walk around with. So the suggestion is this. So as we go about our day and our week, with whoever we encounter, take a look, see the expression on their face, what they're wearing, how they seem, and bring to mind how their lives may be impacted by this coronavirus epidemic. Might they be scared for their health, the health of those who are loved, that they love? Might they be lonely or isolated from friends or family? Maybe they're in a foreign country and they can't get home to their family. Perhaps they've lost a job or afraid for their security. Maybe they're bewildered because they've never been through something like this. Maybe they just don't know where to turn at this moment. So as we know them, as we notice this, simply bring to mind the fact that this is a shared moment, that we too have all of these feelings. Simply touching into this truth, again, equalizes us. And so as we look, just as we look around, as we walk around, just think to ourselves for a second, just like me. Simple. Just notice, look, contact other people, and in your mind, just recall that they're just like me. And then just go on and on. This practice only takes a moment, and it can be repeated throughout the day. This equalizes us. And with this understanding, we tenderize ourselves to ourselves and to the truth of other people. This isn't so much a practice as it's just a willingness to wake up to the truth of how things are with us. So that's a little tip called the Just Like Me practice. And I hope it's helpful, and good luck in these weeks and months to come. So I think we're going to open it up now, Myoshin, aren't we?
Yeah, so we can open it up for any questions. If you can write, short, concise questions in the question box, we'd be happy to respond. It would be wonderful to have a sense of where you're at and what's helpful to you right now.
Thank you, Tim and Myoshin, for those beautiful words and the sage advice. So again, you have some questions. I'll be seeing them and we'll read them out live, but not really mention them when we won't have the live callers come on, but we'll have a chance to make some comments or questions for Tim and Myoshin. And I want to say, after listening to you two, I noticed my heart is feeling steadier, as steady as it's been in the last week. So I really appreciate that. I hope that effect has on a lot of people just to hear from our friends and teachers today.
Well, thanks, Max. You know, it's just so important to remember we're all in this together, and that, you know, even though we have the walls that separate us, in our hearts we are not separate. And I think by our gathering together in any ways that we can, such as this, I mean, these are the ways we can gather now. I think it's useful.
Well, we have a couple of comments. Maybe some of them are comments, and I'll try to form them into question. One from, I can use a first name. So Richard asks about a few words on managing judgment, which is a great topic, something I've been dealing with. So thank you, Richard. I'm assuming a top judgment about judging people in this, making judgments about what other people are doing and if they're being safe enough. Or Richard, please, if you want to add to your comment, please do.
Yeah, I know I caught myself well, I had something I saw on Facebook kind of, no, it wasn't. It was in the next door neighbors thing that you can get in the States, where you're connected to the neighbors around you. And someone made the comment that the people who are hoarding are suffering. It might not be the time to judge them. And you know, that I think that in myself and in others, just knowing that we're all navigating really hard terrain. And so we're all going to have moments where we do something that isn't skillful, isn't helpful. And so with others, you know, when we see, you know, letting that judging mind be that moment that brings us back to they're just like me, and that they too have these moments where it's tough. And with myself, it's also remembering that, oh, judging happens. So can I just see it as the judging mind? You know, I can't stop it from arising, but I don't have to fixate and become it when it arises. And in the scene of it, the being and allowing, then again, it's just another appearance.
There's a great saying attributed to a few people, but I think it's to the Greek philosopher Philo. He said, "Be kind to everyone, for they're fighting a great battle." So I think we can keep that in mind. Everybody's up to here with this whole thing.
There's a bit longer question about, it says, in 1978, a group of 7,000 meditators meditated for 3 weeks on love and compassion. During that time, crime, suicide, and terrorist activity was drastically reduced. So I wonder if this is something we as a Tergar meditation community should engage in. Maybe we can do this around the globe to help alleviate any suffering caused by Corona.
Myoshin, I'll let you comment on that again.
You know, I think that one aspect of this is that if we find ourselves at home and we have more time, that is something we can do. We can practice. We can practice with all the love in our hearts, and that's wonderful. And some of us, you know, are going to be in situations where we might be healthcare workers on the front line, and that's really where our practice is. But whatever we're doing, I think that we can come back to remembering these qualities of love, compassion, the naturalness that Tim spoke of, and touching into that, and really making a commitment within ourselves to keep coming back home to these qualities.
Max, I think there's a question about how we can support friends and family there.
Yeah, Tim, there's a lot of questions coming through. I'm trying to.
One is popping up to my screen. I don't know why. It's calling to me. I see
Well,
it.
it's calling to you. Please respond to the
I think
call.
it says, how can we support friends and family that are very, very anxious and not open to the practices we know and hold dear? So I think this is a great question, and one that's quite dear to my heart. I think that this is a little bit what I was trying to address before. I think that everyone has a different way of seeing the world. Everyone has a different refuge, as it were, particularly when things are really hard like this. And I think the support comes from our shared kindness, our empathetic connection, our tenderness, our gentleness, our willingness to be in contact with our own fear and anxiety and not imagine that somehow we're going to do some practice that someone should be open to. I think the practice is open-heartedness and empathetic connection. I think that's the ultimate practice at any time, in any place, in any tradition, in any circumstance. Because not only is it a wonderful thing to be open-hearted and connected, but actually I think, in fact, people feel that deeply. They really do feel that incredibly strongly. That when they're off and they're spinning and they're afraid and they're maybe rejecting your practices or they're holding some other thing that you think is a little odd, when they can do all of that and you're just there without condemning them or blaming them, tightening up around them, looking down your nose at them, that heals and that relaxes people. We all have had this experience of being with someone who for somehow they just didn't buy our weirdness and they just were there and open and were just willing to absorb who we were at the moment. And it's life-changing. So I think that's it, is just to be willing to be present with yourself and present with their shared reality. And I think that's it.
Thank you, Tim.
Yeah.
Go on to the next question. Or Myoshin, do you have any comments on that?
No, please go on.
Well, there's a question. This came up in a webinar with Edwin Kelley and Kunzin Palmo earlier this week. Some people are feeling, they have to stay home and whatnot and trying to not getting out. And Nicole writes, I'd love to hear tips on walking meditation, especially compassion-themed walking meditation.
Yeah, so walking meditation, I think it's really important to remember that as an alternative to any sitting formal meditation we may do, because sometimes the energy moving through is so strong that it's easier to connect through movement. And so remembering that, and if you find yourself sitting and it's just too much, get up and walk. And really, as you walk, for me, in all cases, in times like this, it's keeping the practice as simple as possible. And so, if I'm really wild inside, it can just be feeling the each foot hitting the ground and feeling that, being with that. It's so helpful to me. And, of course, just remembering that we get pulled out into the torrents of thought, the energy, and just coming back, remembering to come back over and over and over again. And it's okay. It's okay. And as far as doing it with the sense of compassion, walk for the benefit of all beings. Hold them in your heart as you walk. And that in this moment, your sense of presentness and connection as you walk to the welfare of all. Just let this be emitted from your heart and let that be enough. Tim?
It's good.
I'm going back, there was a comment here I wanted to get to. Oh, there are really a lot of questions. We'll go to the question, any suggestion on how to work with dreams that are confusing or disturbing?
I think the way you work with dreams that are confusing is the exact same way that we work with our mind when we have disturbed or confusing or chaotic thoughts. It's all the same. These are just arisings that are based on past conditioning and our own present fears, and things will arise. And as Myoshin said before, if we can be present with them as they arise without trying to manipulate them, we'll be present when they dissipate as well. It's the nature of thoughts and the nature of dreams. Dreams are just thoughts while we're sleeping, that they'll come and they'll go. The skill for us is to be able to allow them to come into a larger space of our own open, spacious, accommodating mind, without trying to push them away or hold good thoughts and push away bad thoughts, and just let it all flow. Just like, the classic image of looking out over a blue sky and allowing light clouds and dark clouds to come without fixating, allow them to come and allow them to go. So whether we're in our daytime or whether we're sleeping, I think the practice is the same.
Thank you, Tim. Myoshin?
Yeah.
Well, that sounds good to me. And that was close to what I would have said. So,
Well, I'd like to read this comment that was written in, and then make a comment and get your thoughts on it as well. But Tony writes, I felt tears of gratitude listening to Myoshin, and I wonder if we can do this many times more. And I just want to address that because I think Tim and Myoshin, you both know, in the Tergar community, we're doing everything we can to keep people connected during this time, and we're webinars, small groups, a lot of things moving onto the virtual format, and we have a great team, and we're going to continue to do this as much as we can to keep our community strong and feeling supported. So would you like to address anything about that from your discussions?
I think we're just on the verge of actually formalizing this. And just in the last 48 hours, we've had, I don't know, 75 or 80 WhatsApp messages and emails. This is the way we roll here.
I was going to say
I
a
think
couple hundred.
yeah, I think we're just on the verge of putting something together formally, and we'll announce that not as on an ad hoc basis, but on a kind of scheduled basis. So what you're asking for is exactly our aspiration.
And looking for connecting in different ways, as Max said, that there'll be this kind, and then where there's local groups and they can use an online platform. Some of those groups might be open to other people joining. There's also plans for doing some just meditation sessions and practice groups. So we are totally exploring how we can continue to meet and be together and support each other in this time.
Yeah.
Thank you both. Yes, not only will we get through this, but we'll be stronger as a community.
Yeah.
In times like this, that's another question from Stephen. Confusion, stressed out, what suggestions would you provide to regularly remember to be aware, to bring back awareness?
One of the pieces that I often use is stress itself. Becoming sensitized to, I often carry stress in my chest. And so if I start to feel the tension, the heaviness, letting that be a reminder to come back to awareness. Or the mental states, so if it's judgment, or if it's, thoughts of sadness or anxiety thoughts, letting that just be becoming sensitized and remember, come back, come back, come back. And also it can be a time to have reminders around, because it is easy to get swept into things. And so, it can be the sticky note time to remind. It can be the app on the computer or the cell phone that pops up reminders. Tergar app does this. And so it's like looking at your life and seeing what ways you can plant the reminders into it. And certainly remembering, try and implant in your mind that as you watch the news, be present, be aware, watch, because that's just can be the place where the fear accelerates. And it's interesting to watch that there can be limits to that. And so if we're going over the limit with that, then it's really hard to remember. But if we're really working with a sense of balance, that yeah, it's important to stay informed of what's happening, but then we probably don't need many hours a day of that. So just making, implanting the seed when you're reaching for media in some way, just the checking, is this going to help me to stay present in this moment?
I think also, one of the ways is just to become sensitized to the difference simply to a mind that has become contracted or a mind that is spacious. So we can say to be aware or not be aware, but awareness is always present, whether mind is contracted or whether mind is spacious. But it's a spacious mind is the mind that is balanced and open and in more at ease. And so this is awareness, meditative awareness itself. So just to be sensitive to how constricted I am in body and mind, or how spacious and open I am. And that's the measure. That's the sort of dividing line.
Thank you. This is tough. Thank you, everyone, for all the great comments and questions. Next one is a comment from Edwin, who says, "Seen on Facebook, if you can't go outside, go inside." I think Myoshin,
That's our Edwin. Yeah.
Thanks, Edwin. Can we take? Well, we've talked that we don't want to have it too specific to any particular practice, but Vicky writes, "I've participated in both the courses about the Bardos. These are current Tergar courses online." And she says, "I've been practicing welcoming dying, but now in the face of all this, I find myself so scared, both of my death and those of my loved ones and everyone. I feel so sad finding myself caught. Any thoughts?"
One that I often have when something like that arises is being grateful that it's arising right now, because now there still is the opportunity to practice with it, and that the more we practice with this fear of death and learn how to not believe the thoughts about it, learn how to really come back home to awareness, to come back home to our essential nature, and letting the movement of the mind be there, that's going to help us when we are faced with death. And so for me, it's like it's another opportunity for practice when it's happening and it's not that moment of death, and feeling the gratitude for that. Tim, I'm sure you have something to say.
No, that's perfect.
Thank you. Some of these questions and comments, I think there's not an answer for them necessarily, but I feel like I should read some of them out because they're experiences that many people are having. So this one is a comment. "It's so difficult being stuck at home. My partner is withdrawn due to fear of catching the virus. It's harder to get food and groceries delivery because stock is low, and I'm lucky still to have a job, but a lot of people are losing their jobs, and the TV only has negative news. How do I stay sane when I feel so alone and isolated? And real life issues such as food and supplies shortages start to bite."
Actually, I was thinking in the middle of that question, something came up. I don't have a good answer to it, but one thing that came up, which is an aspiration that I have for myself and all of us, which is that we use the message of this pandemic, of the many messages, and in one of the messages, the message of impermanence and the fragility of life, to really to really engender a quality of appreciation that we have so much, just that we can have this conversation, that we have life, just to really to appreciate what we do have. And appreciation is an incredibly strong antidote to fear and despair, is actually to turn around and say, okay, look on the other side, what do I have? What do we have here? And for me, one of my aspirations and one of my hopes for all of us is that when we get through this, our perception has changed. We actually begin to see our lives in the world differently. You know, when 9/11 happened and the towers came down, they said, oh, New York was completely different. But then everyone sort of snapped back to the old way of perceiving. I would love to see us really begin to embody a sort of a new way of seeing things. And I think for one is the equality of appreciation. So I didn't answer your question, but I commented on something that you said.
Well, we'll take a moment now. Been reading some of the comments. Myoshin or Tim, do you have anything that you want to ask of the attendees? Or we can keep going. There's a lot of comments. And
What about hearing from people? What are some of the insights you're having in 4 or 5 words? I'm just putting that in the question box. How does that sound?
sounds good. We'll put, and actually one of the questions that came in I wanted to get to is basically back at you. Grace writes, how are you, Myoshin and Tim, coping? So while they're putting their 4 or 5 word response in, maybe you can talk a little bit about how you're coping and dealing with this.
Yeah, you know, I feel for me, it's like a shift in the way my world was. I, you know, have been traveling a lot. I actually found myself in Brazil and suddenly, you know, we made the decision that it wasn't right to go ahead with programs, found myself home, find myself immersed in technology, which has been a sore spot for me in the past. And now I'm totally appreciating it. Look what it's helping us to do. I am doing something that Tim said, looking to appreciation a lot. I also work with grounding. I work with being present with my loved ones. And, you know, that it feels so precious to be a human being and to be in this together.
Yeah. I have this funny thing, like Myoshin said, I travel a lot also, and I was just about to take off on a number of trips and they were all canceled. And now I'm finding myself exactly where I always dreamed I would be, which is not to have to travel so much. And I'm not sure I'm coping with that very well.
Myoshin, would you like me to read out some of the comments?
Yes, if you would.
You probably scroll through all of these.
Okay.
So, insight, the only thing that matters is love. Impermanence, letting go. Don't be afraid to ask for help. We are only as healthy as the least healthy in the world. Life is good and natural again. Interesting. That's nice. There's some positivity. I mean, it's tough, but some people we're learning and growing, and we'll get through this. Acceptance.
You know, the interesting thing is, Max, that it's when times are really hard like this that we shift and move. Our patterns are shattered. Of course, everyone says that they want to change, but it's only really when our backs are right up against the wall that we're forced to. So this is something this is not something we would wish on the globe, but I think that there's an opportunity here. And so I really appreciate the fact that this is an unwelcome, but is a very potent opportunity for us to really shift and move in large ways, personally, in our families, in our communities, globally. Yeah.
Well, I can continue reading these, or go back to some of the questions. We're at
Do we have a time frame? Yeah.
Yeah, we're at the hour. We started a little bit late, and I want to give you the opportunity if you want to stay on a little bit longer. This is a little bit experimental because we're going to do more of these.
Yeah.
And so I don't want to leave any feeling people have been left out, but you know, we can only get so much in an hour. So Myoshin, Tim, what do you think?
Yeah, maybe read a few more comments or the insights. You know, it's powerful to hear our wisdom, to hear what we're seeing.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Kate said, recognizing the nature of mind when I had a panic attack.
Yeah.
Opening
Actually,
the heart.
that brings up a really important point. Actually, when things are really, really, really hard, it's actually often or usually easier to recognize awareness because the stimulus is so high. When the stimulus is high, awareness is present in also a very vivid way. So that kind of panic attack and then recognizing awareness is really great.
There's a couple of comments about retreat. One saying this is a kind of enforced retreat, or
Yeah.
and Anne says this is a very profound retreat time.
Yeah.
Maybe we haven't touched on that, but maybe as far as this is interesting because in a way it seems like anything but a retreat. But Tim, you're hinting on something I think that this time is really actually possibly more powerful for that because our kleshas are these we're stimulated in such a way, and we can recognize these things arising. And so, how does one try to like do home retreat in this environment?
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody has a sense of that, you know. Yeah, again, it's a kind of forced retreat. But I think also, you know, the essential nature of retreat is to really turn one's mind towards one's mind, and not be so completely entangled by the shiny objects of the world. And so we can have that kind of, this is mindfulness, and we can have that sense of watching and being present with our mind, as Myoshin was saying, all the time. And that's retreat, actually, to pull back from the kind of obsessive engagements of the outside world, to actually be present with what's happening here. This is really the meaning of a retreatant. So I think we can do it. We're forced to do it to some degree, but I think just a heightened sense of presence of our situation is a retreat kind of mind already.
Yeah.
One comment was a global retreat. That is what the world needs.
I think we're kind of getting it.
We're getting it. Yeah.
I think
And
we're
I'll just
being
read that last.
forced to retreat in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And a comment, finding many caring friends.
Mm.
Yeah. I see there's a note here. Someone said, could you talk about surrender? I'm feeling it a lot in the last few days at home. It's wonderful. What's the alternative? You know, we can't manipulate our world all the time. Surrender, if we mean by surrender to learn to flow with what's going on, that's a fantastic, there's an insight and a lesson right there. It's beautiful. Max,
Myoshin?
anything else? Any others? Myoshin?
Could read the comments, or what do you think? Maybe do you want to stay on for a little longer?
Maybe just a few more minutes.
Yeah. I don't know if there's any. I'm sure the questions could be endless at this time. But you know, I guess I just really like to say, I'm grateful to be here with you. I'm grateful to come from a lineage that has teachings that can really help us at this time. I'm grateful to have Mingyur Rinpoche, who has made these teachings very accessible to us in our lives. And this is our time to, learn to just be with what is as it is, and to find what's there as we do this. And, you know, as I mentioned earlier, I think honesty with ourselves is really helpful. we're human beings, you know, it's not easy. You look at what's happening, it's just not easy to navigate. But be kind to ourselves and those around us, and even those we do not know, cannot see, that just staying connected through our hearts. Tim?
Yeah, just as a sort of final thought, you know, what we already know is that, as we've been saying tonight, awareness is open and spacious. It accommodates everything in pandemics and hopes and fears and gains and loss, but it itself never changes. So to the degree that we can access or have a sense of the presence of awareness, to that degree, actually, in some strange way, we're even more confident. And so with that sense of something that never changes, then we move into the world with that. We move into the world with an open and tender heart. And so that's the balance of the stability and the confidence that comes from being in touch with awareness that never changes. And then the sensitivity and the tenderness that is an expression of that. And we have that all right with us all the time. And we have practices to enhance that sensibility. So I also share what Myoshin said, a real appreciation for the fact that we're to some degree well equipped for this crazy time. So I really encourage, as Myoshin said, to be kind to ourselves and kind to each other, and to be really, really gentle with everybody, because this is a really tough time.
Well, thank you both. Where we will be having a second Steady Heart in Turbulent Times webinar with Edwin Kelley and Antonia Sambundu on Monday, as I said. And we'll be following up with more of these types of events. I really have confidence that people will get together in the world, and hopefully in a month from now, we'll be meeting under very different circumstances and much more positive ones. But
Yeah.
Again, Tergar community, we'll be here and trying to connect with people around the world as best we can. So I think we can close it there. Myoshin, Tim,
Yeah.
any final word or?
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you very much for joining us, people, for
Thank
your
you,
comment.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Max.
And thanks everybody for your interest, and just showing up is a show of support for each other. And it's really wonderful. So thank you so much.
Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
See you soon.
Bye-bye.